All right, we are here. We are back at Joey's Custard. We are back with Joseph James Almeida. Joey, thank you for being on the show again. I'm glad to be back. The world is on fire, and we have a front row seat. So, anyway, how have you been, man?
Good. Nice to see all you guys. Glad to have you back in the shop after today's mishap this morning. But I'm good, man.
And to clarify, we basically just slept in, so it's all good.
Yeah.
But you know, I wanted to just kind of kick things off, honestly. Like, we'll probably talk about a lot of stuff and get into some deep discussions, but you are 27 and you've come into this ice cream shop probably, this is 3 years now?
Yeah, June 12th actually will be our 4th birthday.
So with COVID-19, the quarantine and the lockdown, life on this island and everything, I honestly just wanted to give you a chance to give an update on just how you've been able to run this business with everything going on in 2020, and what's your perspective on all this?
So I'll share a story I think that encapsulates like what a lot of us went through. In the second week of March this year, I had an employee working for me, and her dad called me and said, "Hey, I got my daughter on a flight back to St. Louis. We're going to board her up in our lake house, and we're going to basically quarantine from the world." And I laughed hysterically at the phone call. I was like, "All right, dude, like whatever you think's coming, like sure." And you know, I had my theories and my thoughts about everything, but I also hadn't really looked into it. And then as things progressed, I saw like a moral obligation to close my store, so I ended up closing at the end of that month, and actually gave that same guy a call back and apologized because I said you were a little ahead of your time with what you saw coming. And we had a good conversation. But he's been in business 30 years, and he just said he had a feeling, and he trusted that, and I'm a believer in trusting that same gut feeling. So I just did that, I would say, more or less through all of this. We were able to deliver and stay open, and our local loyals like really saved us through all of this. But like everybody who's going through or has gone through this, it's unprecedented. We've never seen or experienced anything like this. Everyone that I went to for advice has never been through anything like this. So but yeah, the update would just be, we're still trucking along. We had great growth leading up until this thing. So I keep saying if we can make it through Hurricane Irma, Red Tide, and now this, it's like I really feel like as a business we'll be viable through whatever comes up.
How did y'all operate business during this time since everything had to shut down?
So I made the commitment as a business owner to pay my employees until I went broke. It was really the decision that I made. I have, at the time, 23 kids working for me right now, like 18 because some seasonal kids have left, but all of them are still being paid. And if I'm sitting here teaching them day to day to do the next right thing, and then something like this comes up and I wasn't to pay them or I wasn't to do the next right thing, then it's like what I'm doing isn't matching up with what I'm saying. And so made that commitment and stayed doing deliveries and to-goes myself, worked everything myself, masks, gloves, dropping stuff off at people's doorsteps. It actually felt almost like back to my hustling days. People were leaving money in envelopes in the mailbox, and I'm dropping off ice cream in the coolers and stuff. So we stayed afloat the old-fashioned way, by people taking care of people. But really fortunate to get open back up at the end of April and have this month, with people coming back to Florida.
Did you? Are you cool with talking about the little miracle that you had happen? And actually, I don't want to say little miracle because it wasn't. But
no, big miracle in my life, and I've shared it with everybody as a believer and with non-believers. I think even more importantly. So again, a roundabout way of telling the story was the end of the month when I decided to close. I made that commitment. Okay, I'm going to pay my employees. I'm going to go broke. Whatever I got to do the right thing. And we've talked about this, and it feels weird, but it's like I just made that commitment. So like my mind was set one way. And then I'm sitting in the store a few days later, and I'm talking with another business owner, and she's beside herself. She's frustrated. She is worried. She is stressed. And the Holy Spirit just kind of nudged me and was like, pray for this lady and pray publicly and pray proudly. And sharing it feels almost, not like the right thing, but that's just what I was being convicted to do that week, was pray publicly. And there was 2 other scenarios in that same week where I prayed publicly and God immediately blessed me, once financially and once just with, words of affirmation. And then this third time, I prayed for this lady publicly, and that was it. We went on our day, and nothing really changed. I'm journaling in the mornings and at night, and what I'm writing repeatedly every morning and night is, you are faithful because I am faithful. I think a lot of times we get into a relationship with God and we just envision Him doing everything for us and not the other way around.
Yeah.
So I really committed myself, like, those few days, like, I'm going to be faithful to you, I'm going to serve you. And so, like, every delivery I went on, every call I took, I was just, like, trying to let God lead. And, like, I know we say that, but I really was, like, for those few days. And we all go up and down and in and back in our lives, but for those few days I really feel like God was in the front of everything I did. And then I took 2 days to just hiatus from the shop. I made a decision in my brain that I was completely surrendering the store. With hindsight, I was looking back at, okay, we had a Hurricane Irma, we had red tide, we keep hitting these walls. We're growing, but we're taking 2 steps back, for every 2 forward, 2 back, and it's just kind of frustrating. So I said, all right, God, here's it. I'm putting it on the table. I'm journaling this as I'm going, and this is whatever you call me to do through this. I was finally putting it on the table and asking the question, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
So I come in 2 days after taking that break, I'm doing office stuff and I'm paying bills, and I see a letter from a lady, I don't recognize the name. I pay the rest of my bills, and at the end of it I was like, you know what, I'll open that up. I opened it up to a really, really nice handwritten letter from a lady, and she wants to remain anonymous, so I'm going to keep it that way. Mm-hmm. But she wrote me a check for an exorbitant amount, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Enough money to change not my life, but everyone's lives around me, to stay in business, to keep paying my vendors, to put in a merchandise order. We're sitting here actually wearing 3 of the sweatshirts. I put in a $5,000 merchandise order that same day, and I told her when I spoke with her on the phone a few days later, because it took me a while to get myself together. I was like, this isn't going to go to me, this is going to go to everybody around me. And she said, I knew that when I wrote the check. And hindsight, she took it back to, she was standing in that grocery store that day, listening to me pray publicly. And she had the feeling in her heart that money had never been an issue for her, and she couldn't spend it in 10 lifetimes, is the way she put it to me. And she wanted to make sure selfishly that I stayed in business. She wanted to continue to be able to bring her family here and spend time with us. And so I would say, to go back to your first question, I've survived this time by, 1, being faithful,
right,
to what I believe, and 2, allowing people to bless me and help me, because I think a lot of times we stop people short of the blessings.
Yeah. So literally, because you decided to act in faith and just kind of pray publicly out loud for somebody, and that was a completely selfless move there, it literally brought forth a miracle in its own.
Yeah. And some tie this all together is, I got asked, okay, so at the time I'm living in a house of 10 people, and we're all from ages 16 to 31. It's basically a big sorority and fraternity, so to speak. And as soon as it happened, I knew, okay, this isn't my story. This is for me to share with other believers and non-believers alike. Let me just take this to as many people as I can and share the story. So I did. And somebody asked me recently, if you could know any stat about your life, what would you want to know? If you could quantify how many steps you've taken or how many miles you've ran or whatever it is. Yeah. And I said, to be honest, I would like to know the people I've known the least but impacted the most. So a top 10 sheet of the people that I've run into the least amount in my life. So maybe just one interaction that I've affected and impacted the most without even knowing it. And so one of the people I look up to in life is Henry Nouwen. He's an author. And he met Thomas Merton one time in person. He wrote 2 full books about that one encounter.
Jeez. Wow.
And so that got my brain thinking, how many people has Drew or Jack or Alex impacted that they've known the least but hit the most? And it was that's how I saw that moment. This check, yes, it's for me, it's for my business, yes, sure. But how many people are going to be affected by that I believe is a minimal way, but it's really maximal. So when I took that news home that day, I watched the faces of all the people I was living with just shift. We had almost had a sense of hopelessness, because this was April 6th when I opened the check.
Right.
But there was almost a sense of hopelessness in the country at that time.
Yeah.
Like everyone was kind of looking at the stats and the facts of being like, 1 million people are going to die from this. Like,
on a weekly basis, there were just millions of just people losing jobs or closing businesses.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was happening fast at that point. And so to go home with like such the opposite energy and to be like, look guys, here's the living, breathing God we talk about.
Right.
Like I really believe like I'm going to take those journals and those entries one day and like scan them and write like a short story about the power of prayer. Because like for me, that's what happened in that moment. Like I saw faithfulness. I called upon God, and then what I really did is I became proactive, and it's like there's no recipe for success in life, but like I mean that's at the core of it, like being faithful, being a servant, and then like even if that check never came, like something would have blessed me during that time. I know it, like it's just how it goes.
And on top of that too, you know, you're being an example for the people that you bring into this company, essentially. Like 100%. You are being a leader to the employees, whether it is just you know, somebody that guides them or teaches them about business or just shows them how to just be like an adult that depends on Jesus. And I think like, you know, you can give them a job, you can give them guidelines, and all that is still kind of in the area of almost like talk is still cheap because things are good for you. But you had put it all on the line, and you were like ready to keep paying these employees, but you were going to go broke. And then lo and behold, that miracle is brought about, and that literally reinforces who you are, not just like for yourself or just for other people you share testimony with, but the people that you're actually guiding. So I thought, you know, that was pretty cool. And I don't know if you did you tell them about that?
Yeah, so one by one, the employees came in, kind of shared it with them. The first person I brought it to, because like I said, the world on a grander scale was in such shambles at the time that when it happened, I was my buddy works directly in line for the governor of the state of Florida, and so like, not that I have like direct access to him, but I said, hey, can you do me a favor? I called him almost immediately. He was the second person I called after my brother. So can you do me a favor? Can you share this story anonymously? You don't include my name, don't include her name, don't even include the location. Just say Florida, South Florida.
Right.
But please tell our governor that people are helping people.
Yeah.
And the next day when Governor DeSantis was on, that was basically a phrase that he touched on. He was like, people, citizens of my state, are helping one another. So he's like, you're not seeing everything that's going on behind the scenes. So to know like that I took a story that impacted me and immediately it went up and through a channel, it's like, that's God.
Yeah.
That's God working in my life. The fact that I even know that person and had the thought given to me, hey, share this with him to share it up the chain, because at the time there was a lot of hopelessness. And then like for me personally, the people around me, like there was a shift after that date.
Yeah.
Like we no longer were living in fear, like we were being respectful for what was going on.
Yeah.
But we started like game planning, like what's the long term like this look like? And you know, you get a bunch of young people in a room, you start sharing ideas. Like that's really what I think it came out of it. That's the miracle, like what you said.
I think the reason you see a lot of fruit from your faith, maybe more than I'm sitting here thinking like, I wonder why I don't see as much, is because I think you really put action to your convictions, whereas a lot of people probably don't, and they don't get to see the fruits, you know, as much as you have.
Yeah. And when you speak in like, we all deal with it, but like when you speak in Christian terms, like fruit, to like a non-believer, they're like, what are you talking about? You know?
Yeah.
But it like the good book tells us, follow these guidelines, follow these rules, like the fruit will be there. You're
That's
right.
most of the time, like that mentality is like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
And that right there is just, there's not a middle ground for that. You know, the actual, like if you put that in a court of law and you investigated it, the evidence right there is that you acted on your faith.
Yeah.
And that was the result of you acting on your faith. Yeah.
That's even funny that you say that too, because I talk about like if I got pulled into court, litigated for my faith, like a prosecution attorney would have a heyday with me, because they could shoot holes in my theology, they could shoot holes in, you could just pick me apart as a person because of what I've been through in my life, but they cannot, there's an impossible way to quantify faith, belief. So it's like, no, I know, and I've experienced what I've experienced from 22, 23 in the gutter, you know, life in shambles to the transformation. It's like, that has nothing to do with me. That has to do with moving on those convictions, moving on the Holy Spirit, whatever you call that. People call it energy or universe, or
right.
We hear so many different things, Tao, Buddha, like it doesn't matter to me, whatever. For me, this is the path I've chosen, and I'm seeing fruit, and so it's like I'm gonna keep with this because I that faith is real. I've touched it.
Yeah.
I've experienced God in the living, and so it's like you can't take that from me. You can take everything else, but
yeah. So through that lens, then right there, we've gone from a shift within just this last week of, staying inside, stay home, stay safe, do the right thing, social distance, all this, to now we are dealing with, in my mind, what seems like a race war. And I don't want to try to dissect that too much as like four white guys around a table trying to figure out, hey, let's get to the bottom of this.
Mm-hmm.
But through the lens of a Christian, with all these events happening, do you have a personal take?
I think Stephen Furtick did it beautifully. Pastor Stephen Furtick. And you just got to take whatever. So I have a platform with the business. I posted yesterday for Blackout Tuesday. That's my small way. And so, take your platform that you've worked hard and gotten, maybe because of your white privilege, maybe not. Maybe because you've gotten a few breaks, maybe not. Whatever it is, if you're in a position of any type of power, of any type of substance, of any type of character, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, whether you're from overseas or whether you were born in the United States, doesn't matter. If you are an American citizen right now, you need to turn that over to the people who need that platform to speak. So Atlanta, I think, did the best job of anybody in the country.
My buddy went down to Atlanta. Yeah.
You got Killer Mike going up and just crushing it, speaking truth, speaking validity into the situation, saying basically putting his arms up as a guy who's been tied in Black Lives Matter from the beginning and being like, I don't know the answers to this. And he's like, but I know I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to come up with a plan. Yeah. Turn over that platform. Stephen Furtick had another gentleman on and said, here, you speak. Mm-hmm. So it's whatever I'm going to say or think, it's not going to be the right answer because it's not from the people who need to speak.
Right.
I can have all the great ideas, and I think I'm listening to David Goggins right now in my free time, and he talks about how he sat down at MIT across from a guy who studied it and thought he knew everything, but David Goggins is an example of a guy who's lived everything. Yeah. Let's leave this to the people who's lived through it.
Right.
That's really my, I said to you and Laura, this is not my table to sit at and have a conversation. That's really it. I feel strongly about it, trust me. I served with people of color, I served with minorities. I myself have witnessed, let's say in quotations, racism in my life, and maybe could have done a better job standing up for, shooting down, doing my job, so I can look internally and fix myself through this. That's the way I see it. But as far as speaking on it and even thinking that what I would say would catch any traction, I think it's unfair. I think take the concepts of Jesus and just love everybody, do the best we can. Jesus said at the end of chapter 6 of Matthew, in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, one of his most pertinent things, but it's do not worry for tomorrow because tomorrow has enough worries for itself.
Right.
Worry about today. And so it's today I can't come up with that solution. So it's just let the people who've poured their entire lives into this, the Holy Spirit is working through them and in them to fix this problem. Allow that to happen.
Yeah.
We're all going to be a piece in this puzzle, but it's some of us are going to play very small parts, and so it's be okay with that. Yeah. Your voice doesn't need to be heard just because you think you have something to say.
There's somebody posted this, and I thought this was just a really great thing to kind of say to anybody who may want to comment on Facebook, but this or but that or something like that. And I think the way to look at this situation through the lens of the gospel basically is through Luke chapter 15, where the basically Jesus talks about if the shepherd is with 100 sheep and one sheep is lost and led astray, the shepherd will leave the 99 to go after the one sheep. I think whatever background you have or whatever answers you think you have to the problem, I think we can all agree that the black community is the one lost sheep right now in whatever form we think that is. Mm-hmm. And what's important right now is that one lost sheep is found. Yeah. Whatever we think that is the situation that is truly crippling that community. I think like kind of what like makes me sad is that through all of this, I like personally feel such a separation from that community. Like I want to just really be a part of like what's going on, or like what, like I want to say like I really am here with you, but then it's also like, man, I have just even though we live under the same flag and the same constitution, you know, it is your home life. It's your home life compared to my home life. It's your neighborhood compared to my neighborhood. And that, oddly enough, is always on the other side of town. And that's what's weird. Like, being a resident of Louisville, Kentucky, where one of the riots is currently happening, where Breonna Taylor was killed, this is a very, like, troubling thing, because one of the largest churches in the nation is in Louisville, Kentucky. And yet, I still don't see the diversity that I think I ought to see in that church. Not blaming them for anything. It's just, it could simply be their geographical location. But it is still weird to think that the 10th most impoverished neighborhood in the United States is 12 miles, I think, less than 12 miles away from the 8th largest church in the nation. And so, you know, that right there, whatever the problem was that led to that, like, I think we can all agree that there can be things that are led to fixing that, you know. But yeah, I just, for me personally, like, I'm a little worried about the way the social fabric of our nation is going to change after these upcoming weeks. Being locked indoors for so long, and then only to come outside for basically what seems like, I mean, what on one half of the equation is peaceful protest, but on the other half of the equation is unwanted chaos, right?
Outright violence.
Yeah, it's an unnecessary casualty, and I don't know, especially as four white guys again around the table, what to say about that. Like, of course I'm not with it, right? But what do I say that really would communicate something that is honest?
What I can speak on from what I've done, and this, I share this like just because I think it's important. Reach out to the people who you know in those communities are being affected and ask them how you can help.
Yeah.
So like I had the gift of in the military when I was in the Army, serving with my three best friends. We're all black guys and we're all from different areas. And so I had a friend from Chicago, I had a friend from Memphis, and I had a friend from Charlotte. And the four of us were everywhere one of us went, the other three were right behind. And so that year in Korea, I really got to be, like, in a way, I got the greatest blessing of my life. Like, I got to ask unabated, unblocked questions to three young black men who grew up in different, very turmoil-filled cities.
Yeah.
And hearing what they went through and, like, what their lives were like, and how, you know, pretty much being forced into gang culture as a teenager, not willingly, not wanting to, trembling the first time that they touched and held guns, but hearing about how you become more emboldened and brash by the more you have it. Right. These three were guys who broke free, broke clear, and got into the military. That's a dream for some of those guys, and they got to do that. But getting to, like, reach back out to them and say, okay, like, I know you're in Memphis, I know you're in Chicago, I know you're in Charlotte, what can I do for y'all? And so they sent me names to organizations and links that I'm going to hopefully be able to work with moving forward. But it really is, it's just like anything. God calls us, like, be practical, so, like, pray, get on your knees, meditate. Like, he calls us to do different things. It's like, this is one of those scenarios where I think communication is key. I think reaching out, hearing, just simply letting somebody tell you what they're going through. Yeah. Because, like, that's really at its core what social media was made to do. And so, like, if we're going to overcome a situation like this, it's like, it's going to be through these, as much as we don't want to sometimes, we're going to have to use these platforms to really get ideas to the forefront, to get them communicated well. But yeah, I would say that's what I've done, and I've already felt that little bit of that glimmer of hope. Mm-hmm. Because, one, they're people. And so, like, I care about people, all people. And so it's like, when I have a friend who has a family member die, especially guys I was in the service with, I always reach out. Yeah. So these guys might not personally have had, you know, somebody die, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, in this scenario, but that is their brother. You know, that is, right. In a roundabout way, they've probably had somebody die under similar circumstances. And so they're going through the death of a family member right now. Like, our job is to communicate, ask, what can I do? And if they just tell you F off, like, I'm not with it, whatever, I don't want to hear from you, whatever. It's like, okay, good. Like, but I'm here.
Right.
And whether you want me here or not, I'm going to be here. Like, I think that's really what it, like, there isn't going to be, like, a forefront position for white people in this.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And if you're a white person who doesn't agree with that, it's like, you're going to have a hard time with what we were talking about, what the world looks like moving forward. Because it's like, we're in this together, we have been from the beginning. And, like, I guess because I was in the military, I saw that in a different way. Where I physically had to stand in formation and plan and, and do these different missions and be trained and, like I said, see and listen and share meals and share stories with guys from all over the world. It's like my small town community, Sanibel, 96% white people life went out the window in a heartbeat. Like, all the privilege and everything I grew up with, I quickly learned, like, oh, that means nothing. It really, I mean, it means everything, but I'm saying to most people it means nothing because they don't, like you said, their world is just so different.
Yeah.
When those guys wake up in West Louisville and maybe bike or ride by that church,
right,
they probably physically feel like that building is here working against me.
Yeah.
We can't even fathom what that feels like.
Right.
When we pull up to church, it's a good feeling. It's a warm feeling. It's like, even if they're being forced to go there, that alone might make them hate it even more. And so it's like, it's just our time to really, like, to take a step back and to give our platforms and our podiums and our whatever we've got over to the people who are doing this for the right reasons. Like you said, there is some uncontrolled chaos. There are some people who really just want to see the world burn, and I don't even blame them for that. I really don't. I genuinely don't. Like, if the roles were reversed, that might be me, because I'm a hothead like that. And like, if I felt like my voice was never going to be heard, I might go out on my sword too. So,
I'm truly afraid though of like what that alone will do. So it's like you've got a protest that is out there to say, hey, look, this is something that's affecting us. This is the change that we want. We're here to change your mind. All of a sudden, all of that happens in the aftermath of what is supposed to be a peaceful protest. What do you say to people who look at that and they were the ones that the protesters were trying to change the minds of, but then they just wrote it off because of everything that happened?
Well, the peaceful protest apparently didn't work because they've been peaceful protesting for years.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, if I felt like my voice wasn't being heard like that, I would do the same thing. Like, I probably personally wouldn't, but I mean, you have to kind of step it up at some point whenever you're being run over, and the peaceful protests for years have been going on and nothing changes.
Yeah. It's because even when, to go back to history, like, even when peaceful protests did work and Martin Luther King pushed the civil rights and, they got laws passed and you had desegregation of schools, like you spoke on, Drew, like, that desegregation of communities, historically speaking, hasn't even really happened. Like, I can take you to a specific area in Fort Myers right now, park the car, and you'll only see people of one race. I'll drive you 10 minutes down the road, park the car, you'll only see people of one race. Drive 10 minutes. I'm not joking when I say that.
Yeah.
That close in a 30-minute span, I can take it. And so, like, they've won small victories, but their voice is still in the back of the room, and that's how they feel. And so it's like, and then you really want to get into it and talk about, but like agent provocateurs, like, I've seen videos of the white gentleman smashing the windows at AutoZone.
Do we want to put our tinfoil hats on real quick?
Yeah, I do. And then I've seen videos of...
What's that?
I've seen videos of white guys escalating the violence and black guys grabbing said weapons of violence or said tools of destruction, removing them, and being like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. That's what I want to get to the bottom of real quickly, is the pallets of bricks that I saw.
That it's all over the cities.
Just... What the heck is that?
We had a picture shared right here downtown Fort Myers 2 days ago. Pictures of pallets, same situation.
What is that?
Exactly. No, and that's where you get into.
So to kind of explain a little bit.
Oh, okay, yeah.
For them, so basically we just put our tinfoil hats on, which means we're kind of getting into our conspiracy theory
We're getting weird.
Real quick, yeah. But so basically, what ended up happening was just like what you said, the peaceful protest. Like, they weren't enough, but then here we are having casualties after the fact. And what instigated these casualties was mysteriously through all of these major cities, pallets of bricks, like red bricks, were just placed on streets throughout all the, like, there are multiple pictures in multiple cities of pallets of bricks in downtown areas.
Unmarked, untied down, just sitting wide
unaccounted for. Nobody knows what they were there for, but those bricks were used to vandalize stores, break windows, and to loot businesses.
I mean, do you think it's just simply the people who wanted to loot and...
These were put there days before these protests broke out, though.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And so that's where you get into, like, Operation Backwoods. That's where you start, like...
You mean Northwood?
Northwood, sorry.
Yeah.
You start unpacking, like, the U.S. government's history in inciting violence in order to get the amount of support they need to do something.
Yeah.
And so, like, you get stuff like this where, like, do I want to believe the worst? No. But it's like, where are the answers to the questions?
Right.
Why is that gentleman smashing windows at AutoZone?
Right.
Why is his ex-wife saying that he works for the St. Paul Police Department?
Right.
Why is 2-3 young white gentlemen in Texas smashing stuff and being screamed at by hundreds of people to stop?
Yeah.
Kindful, peaceful protesters being like, please stop. And the guy has to get violent with the dude to get him to stop. It's like, where are the answers to this question? Why are there pallets of bricks showing up?
Right.
In not one, not two, but 100 or more or less. It doesn't even matter. If it's more than one, it's not a coincidence. It's like, why? How?
Is that,
and we won't get those.
So what's infuriating about that is that, you know, I think instinctively we want to take that all the way to the government, or we want to take that all the way to, like, Antifa or something. What would that mean then? You know, honestly, would that, like, what would that mean for an entire community, like an entire, like, race of people, like the black community, wanting to protest, and they're saying, hey, there's systemic racism going on here, and it's taking this form, and it's taking this form, and it's taking this form, and we want to talk about it. All of a sudden, you see people who are being identified as belonging to that system that are now escalating the situation where law enforcement legally can get involved to extinguish said peaceful protest. It's like, can you say something like that out loud on an intellectual, like, level? Like, could you be a city official that says that out loud and still keep your job? Could you be like a pastor at a church and say that out loud and still keep your job?
Say what exactly?
To say, like, imagine if I was a pastor of a church and say, hey, everybody, we know what these protests this week. We know what they were protesting about. We know what was going on. We are here in support. I have a personal opinion right now about why these protests escalated to a violent level. And my personal opinion is that pallets of bricks randomly were laid out through all the major cities.
Yeah.
And we have no idea where they came from. But what we did observe through social media was videos of white gentlemen in bandanas who were unidentifiable. Some were identified to belong to certain police precincts or certain other groups, what have you, that started to smash and loot buildings. And they escalated the situation to where the peaceful protest no longer became a peaceful protest. Law enforcement was able to step in. So now, as a pastor, as a shepherd of a congregation, would I completely lose my credibility if I were to say, I believe this was a setup? I believe this was a conspiracy to defame an entire people group and make the world believe that they are incapable of having a peaceful protest and a conversation about the things that are disenfranchising their community. I feel like saying that right now, like, I feel like this would be something where it'd be like, well, it's all over for you.
I don't know. I mean,
I'm not saying it's right, but it's like, that is what my instinctive imagination is leading me to believe from what I'm observing, you know? Like, where did the bricks come from? And that's not a huge question because they were there. So I don't know what to tell people when when somebody says, well, what about all the looters? Be like, well, I mean, dude, that is an entire deep discussion, because on social media you saw a lot of people of the black community, looting a Target or looting a CVS pharmacy, but you saw these people who were in different sections of town, different streets, just taking bricks and just smashing windows and walking off. And it looked as if they didn't have signs, they didn't have banners, they weren't marching, they weren't chanting. It was just groups of guys walking off, smashing things, and running away. And it was like, who are they?
And that's back to Operation Northwoods. That's literally what ended up happening. Was someone had to ask that question and pose that question, and ironically enough, it was Alex Jones, who's now 30 years in the future considered to be a complete psychopath, even though he was one of the people who initially pushed this theory and proved it to be true.
Right.
That these boots match the boots of U.S. military groups, and they went backwards, and that's how they ended up getting those answers. It's like,
and to explain that real quick, can you explain to them what Operation Northwoods is?
And it's even hard to say that, because again, just the question you posed.
Right.
I can't even officially say the United States government, but I believe within the United States government it was the CIA. Were paying provocateurs to go to, I want to say, it was Cuba.
So it was the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Cuban Missile Crisis, yeah.
Yeah, and there was, to just piggyback a little bit, so what they were doing was they had this operation where, I guess it was because of the Geneva Convention, that there are certain laws or rules of engagement that basically, if you belong to NATO or the United Nations, you can't commit these certain acts of war unless provoked in a certain way. So what Operation Northwoods was going to be was the CIA essentially planned to arm Cuban natives to ambush and kill American troops, so that the American government could legally, within the Geneva Convention, enact acts of war.
That. Yeah. Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And that's a real situation. And that's and so it's just like, if that is it, so basically there was this comedian that explained it this way. He said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist kind of guy. I don't believe in every conspiracy theory. But here's the way that I take this whole thing, is that we have elected a government to be put in charge of millions of citizens, and that's basically the bottom line.
Yeah.
I am one man who has been put in charge of one child to raise that child, protect that child, just like the government is in charge of raising us and protecting us in certain ways. And he said, I lie to my child every single day. And he said, why would we think that is not possible for the government to have human error or to be human in that way, Mm-hmm. So now it's just like, what kind of conversations do we honestly have? You now have an entire people group. You have an entire community that has been disenfranchised by the casualties of this chaotic protest that happened, and now the conversation is back to square one.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to be like, well, yeah, Black Lives Matter, but, and it's always going to be the but at the end of it, and that's going to be the extent of the conversation.
Back with the brick things, do you think it's possibly people who are obviously still racist and want, I don't know how to say it, they're doing it on purpose to make the protests and riots look worse than they are?
No doubt.
I mean, is that what you think it is?
That's that's a completely possible scenario. Yeah.
I mean, if I was looking at it that way, that's completely what I think it would be.
But here's the typical demographic that really is what we consider to be a racist, backwards community. It's people who don't have community with black people, right? It's people who don't share neighborhoods, schools, or workplaces with people in the black community, and they don't want to. So that's backwards and racist.
Yeah.
And so what is hard to say that, oh, it's just a bunch of racist white guys who were like, you know what, let's make this protest look bad. Because how could a bunch of backwoods racist white guys throughout all the nation collectively get together and say, hey guys, let's throw pallets of bricks into these major cities a few days before these protests take place?
I have no clue. But
And
like,
then we'll go in and sabotage the whole thing.
what else do you think it could be? Like, what are the other theories to it?
I mean, what system is in place that you can coordinate an operation like that goes across the entire nation? Chicago, Atlanta,
Yeah.
Louisville, Philly.
So I guess it
now
has to
what?
be
Fort
something
Myers,
with like the
every
government or
city,
something.
LA.
I don't know.
Tampa, New York, LA.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's all the major cities.
Yeah.
So what are you saying? He's saying it's like
You think it's
think
government
it's like
like
racist
organized
groups or
sort of
government?
type thing?
I don't know another
I think it's
system
important
in
to
place.
ask the question.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
I think it's important to bring that up to the forefront of this conversation because it's like I and you guys can't shoulder the load of, for lack of a better term, idiots, jerks, racists, whatever we want to call them, like
Right.
making decisions.
Yeah.
I am not the sins of my ancestors.
Right.
I am my own person.
Right.
And so are you, and so are you. So it's like, for me, I want to get to the root of that question because it's like, I feel you, man.
Yeah.
I feel your pain. Like, I am just as frustrated. I spend hours listening to podcasts, reading books, and audiobooks. Like, I want to know the answer too, bro. I really do. So it's like, that question needs to be brought up because if we don't bring it up, then it
Right.
won't get answered. If those two questions just come from that community that's being afflicted right now, they won't get. But if enough
Right.
powerful, rich,
Right.
hardworking Americans with a good name and a good legacy
Right.
ask that question at the same time, then you get answers.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, like, it's sad, but if you can find conspiracies throughout the government in any history of any period of time.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is, like, for as much progress as we've made in this country in a short time, it's like we're going to be remembered by our sins, just like we look back on Soviet, we look back on Germany, we look back on, you know, the Ming dynasties and these different periods in time where we're like really easy to point out, like, wow, look at those scars, like, look at what they did to each other.
Yeah.
We're living that right now. And so
Yeah.
it's like, are you going to be on the right or wrong side of history in this? Like, are you going to be on the side that pushes forward and makes the place better, like we've done for the last 300 years? Or are you going to hold on for every last dying breath to the way things were, which is the whole point is to drive this thing forward.
Yeah.
So that's really what it comes down to. It's like we have to ask the question because if we don't, the question never goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened in 9/11, Tower 7? Like, what happened? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, there's
Exactly.
questions that if the communities in the country really pushed forward and wanted answers, we would have gotten them.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes we do, and we get answers.
Yeah.
But when we don't, it goes away, you know? And it's like, it's our community's job. It's, you know, Pastor Stephen Furtick, it's like you pose the question. It is each individual government leader's job to pose that question
Yeah.
fearlessly,
Yeah.
you know, and pastors and community members and teachers and me as a business owner. Like,
Yeah.
it's our job to push the conversation. And I shared this with you guys before we went live, but on my personal Instagram, I lost a record number of followers in
Yeah.
one day yesterday from one post.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you I can guess the race of every single one of those people that unfollowed me, and that's sad.
No doubt.
Because, like we always talk about, one of our good buddies says, if you look at a group of 100 people in the United States, 10 of them just suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
90 people, you know, whatever, they're going to be from suck to great, you know,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range. But 10 of those 100, multiply that to get to 350 million people in the United States.
Right.
You have a lot of people who suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a lot. You have an exponential number of people who suck. So it's
Yeah.
like, it is our job as the people in the 90 to outmaneuver, outpower, and outthink those 10 people who suck. Period. Like, that's
Yeah.
the way I see it.
And a lot of those people that are in the 10 are most of the times the ones that are loud.
Yes.
And
The
so
most
it seems like
outspoken.
they're a lot bigger than 10.
Yes.
You know?
They're the ones commenting and posting
Yeah.
and unfollowing and sharing. And
Yeah.
you asked the question earlier, how could, let's just call them, for lack of a better term, redneck hick boys
Yeah.
congregate together and know to meet and coordinate? And I'm not saying they could, but they could on Facebook. There's
Right.
private groups.
That's what
and
I
I'm
literally
involved in a
said that.
couple
That's
private
what-
groups
I mean,
on
didn't say
Facebook
that,
that
I
I've
was
removed
thinking.
myself from over the years because I'm just like, this isn't who I am
To
anymore.
clarify, probably not. a redneck.
No, like a couple pages from military days and stuff.
Right.
Stuff gets shared on there, but as I'm maneuvering who I am, I've had to remove myself from those groups. But there's a certain way of thinking, and us as white people, we have to be honest to have this conversation. Like I said earlier, I've witnessed racism in my life and could have done a better job at one, stopping it, and two, making sure it didn't happen again.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Every person needs to be willing to look in the mirror and answer that question honestly. And if you haven't, good for you. But what can you do to make it better? That should be the question you're asking yourself.
Yeah.
This is not about, oh, well, white people get killed and so do black people, so your black people don't matter. It's
Right.
like, no. On a percentages and on a number scale, more black people as percentages get killed than whites, and in a much more brutal fashion, let's be
Right.
honest. Yes, there are crazy white people who deserve to be put down.
Right.
Sometimes do. That's just a fact. But some of these cases, we've seen them recorded. They're completely helpless. It's just, we watch it in horror. And so it's like, if that doesn't make you question like the way things are going, like you can't just say, oh, this is a few bad cops, because it's a lot of few bad cops at this point.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's a lot, and we're watching it in a time where everything is captured. And so it's like, there is no excuses anymore.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how long this has been going on.
Precisely.
We think it's just now happening, but it's just,
Precisely.
the facts are that it's just now being recorded.
It's just now being
social
recorded.
media is
and
now
so it's
finally
like, yeah.
putting it out there. And
It's-
something else that I've been confused with right now is like how we can help. And I know like you ask people around you that that are struggling with it and ask them how you can help. But like even like if you don't do that, like with the protests and stuff, I almost feel like every single peaceful protest that I've seen has turned out to become like dangerous in some form. You know what I mean?
Drew, I know you have a good answer to this, I can tell, but this is okay. So if you want to do anything in this world, if you want to change the world at all, a short-term plan is never as good as a long-term plan. So
What do
if,
you
like,
mean?
So if you're thinking like just in the terms of like, oh, well, I can go help with a peaceful protest, or I can do this or write this, and short-term fixes, those are good. So for instance, I sat down and was like, I want to own a business. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go in every day. I'm going to work my fingers to the bone. I'm going to work 90 hours a week. I'm going to study in my free time. I'm going to listen to books. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to go to people. But you can live your life from this point until the end of it, Jack, with the mindset of, I'm going to become an elected city official. I'm going to rewrite laws in my community.
Yeah.
I'm going to change it from the inside out. Or I'm going to become an owner of a business. I'm going to change. So like you can take the feelings that you're having in the short term and apply them to long-term plans and physically change the outcome of the world around
that's
you.
huge.
So you're saying I can help right now by focusing on the future?
Your future plans. Who
Yeah.
are you going to become? Are you going, when you hear a joke that might lean racist, are you
Yeah.
going to stop it?
Exactly.
When you see or witness somebody being harassed by police, do you step in and say, hey, do you use your white privilege for good, or do you allow things? So like I think the best answer I'd have to that is like, come up with a long-term plan.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying like go be president and do it that way, but I'm just saying like there's so many ways to affect it from the inside out. You can never make another poorly tasted race joke again in your life, and that in and of itself is progress.
Yes. And something else is like, if people are like, why aren't you doing anything right now? Like in this moment, like why aren't you like, that's where I get like I feel like I am doing my part by not being racist, by not making racist jokes, by not doing that, but I feel like people don't expect me to do more, but almost feel like I should be doing more, like I could be doing more right now. And like that's where I get to the point where I'm like, I'm not like 100% sure what to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like,
I mean,
because like I don't have money that I can donate. Like I work at Rikishi. I make like $10 an hour, and I have to buy my car. Like I can't like.
well, I think
And
I
then-
think even more effective than donations is your attitude towards it. Like I've seen a lot of people post that being not racist is not enough anymore. You got to be anti-racist and be proactive in stopping it and just not allowing it. And I think that's one thing that's been encouraging to see in our country is that we are quickly. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but I feel like we're quickly uniting. Around the fact. I mean, there's not many people that are gonna disagree with you on this matter right now in this country. Like, and if they are, they get, get thrown to the curb really quickly. So, I'm hoping we're making progress quickly, and I think we are. But I think you got to be anti-racist in everything that you do, instead of just not being like, well, I like black people. You know, like you got to proactively seek to make it better.
But so like along with that though, that is also where we wade into, in my mind, like really murky waters, because what if I say, in fact, I want to be anti-racist. I want to build up these disenfranchised communities. I want to help the black community. I want to help the Latino community, or just any minority in general. And I say, this is what I want to do. And then turns out like that answer isn't accepted, or it's like,
what do you like being anti-racist isn't accepted?
This is like the real difficult conversation where, as a Christian, I'm pro-life. That's it, and that's like, if anybody gets upset at me, like that listens to this podcast, like, listen, I don't have hate for pro-choice people. I don't.
That's just
I have no hatred for you. I have love for you. I don't share your view, and that's it. I'm pro-life. So when I say, though, if I say, look, what if one of the solutions to rebuild the black community was to take a pro-life stance, as a nation, because of how many black children are aborted every year.
Some cities, it's as high as 60% of
right.
the abortions are African American.
So literally, that means if you see a young pregnant black woman in one of the ratios is in Harlem, right? She is statistically more likely to get an abortion than she is to have a baby, and that right there is where I'm like, let's reform the law enforcement side of things. Let's reform citizens arrests. That for one thing, let's get that taken care of. But then if I wanted to say, hey, there's some other things that I really think, and then that's where we have a whole other political like forest fire, and I'm saying, hey, this would actually like double the size of your community within 2 years.
Also, what do you say to the people who say, maybe, I don't think this is a lot of people. I think a lot of people who do have abortions are because they can't support the child. The father's not there. But like, what if they do say, for the people who are in Harlem, and I believe gang activity is very strong there, like they don't want to have the child because they think there's a very high chance that they will join a gang, they will do wrong, like, you know what I mean?
And that's the bed of nails that like we have to work through.
Yeah.
Right? I think if you're willing to show up to the table with ideas and not be worried about being received as being right or wrong is like the crux of this.
Right.
I think like an open conversation, an open-ended table, so to speak. And this dates back to 2016, like when Kanye was willing to go sit down at the table with Trump, he caught a huge amount of backlash.
Yeah.
And then just last few weeks, you get Biden saying, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
Right.
And it's like things like this, and then you have black communities stand up against that and produce videos and say, no, I am black and I did vote for Trump. And just like you said, like pro-choice, pro-life, doesn't matter. You love and respect that person.
Right.
Yeah. It's like if we show up to the table and we're not worried about being right or wrong, that's when progress will happen. Because it's like, like changing what pro-life, pro-choice might be maybe the third item on the agenda towards success. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe it's the 100th item. Like to me and you, we see that in our life, and even probably more would be like, that seems very logical. Let's try that out. But if that's not the order of operations, then I don't think you're losing for having tried. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also their argument would be, from their side, why would we worry about abortion rates when we can't even keep alive? Because of police brutality, the people that are out in the streets getting killed by white cops. Like, why would we worry about the unborn when the born can't even survive right now? That's
like, and if that would be the conversation right now, then like, literally, here is what I'll say in this moment right now. I'm literally not going to get into statistics of what that is because of the political response and backlash that I'll get by saying that. I could really say some things that are statistically true that would be like kind of reinforce what I'm saying, but right now, like, we are protesting a particular subject right now, so we are going to pay attention to that particular subject. But that is also the thing where I'm like, that is where I say, hey, I want to join you. I want to have a seat at the table here with you guys. I want to listen. I want to take a knee. I want to protest. I want to hear you. And then when you say, hey, be anti-racist and contribute, and then I bring this to the table and you say, nah, that won't work. Yeah. And then I say, but I mean, here are the numbers. That's the hard part, right? And I'm not trying to get at any particular place by saying that, but that is the thing where I'm like, is this kind of like a situation now where I guess if you have a certain skin color, your word at the end of the day is final, and that I don't even know what I would have to ask other friends in the community that I'm a part of, like, what they would think of that.
Well, yeah, and you get into the meat and potatoes discussion of, like, you can push for and look for equality of opportunity. Mm-hmm. That's what I think we would all agree on. But equality of outcome will never be.
Yes.
And, like, you can't have both at the same time. It will never happen. You cannot, into the same community at the exact same age, have a black and a white baby born, parented by the same parents with the same siblings in the same schools with the same meals with the same sport, all the way to the end of their life, and end up with, yes, they had equal opportunity and equal outcome the whole time. It's not going to happen.
Right.
For instance, not to get back to this, but I want to like, I'm successful at my age, and Alex and I have discussed this, like, because I'm willing to put in, like, an ungodly amount of time into my business. And, like, people love listening to Gary Vee, and people love listening to Joe Rogan, and people love listening to all these different people. And it's like, because at the end of the day, they're not looking for equality of outcome. Mm-hmm. So that's where, like, I agree with you. Like, facts over feelings. There's a time to look at statistics, and I just think we're in a time right now where it's like, I don't think we're going to get really clear answers for the time being. And I think even if you look at history as a timeline, it's like, yes, we've progressed so much as the U.S. this first 300 years, but, like, and that's what I mean about long-term solutions, like, we might not even live to see the end of this. Mm-hmm. Maybe our kids do. Mm-hmm. And so let's make it from our home out better. Yeah. So, like, let's love one another, let's respect, let's take the gospel principles, let's take the Sermon on the Mount and actually live it in our daily lives, so that your kids, when you raise them, and your wives and your families will be members of their community who the black community doesn't even have to question if they support. They know. Right. You're right there. You go to the church in West Louisville.
Right.
You've always been friends with people from there. You are living in these other places, and your family is contributing to these organizations. Like, don't even give someone room to question, because if you're living properly as a Christian, there shouldn't be room to question. They can hate on you and dispute your ideas, I guess, so to speak. But I think right now, like, I'm in the same boat. I think a lot of times I agree with facts over feelings. I think right now for me, this is a feelings matter. And so that's why, like, I'm folding my chair, taking a step back and being like, I'm going to let these come to the front, let them speak their part, but, like, behind the closed scenes, like, I'm going to be figuring out ways that I can long-term change my course, plan my life to figure this out. If that means buying a home, like, in a black community, and parking my family right in the center of that, and being the white guy on his porch drinking his coffee in the morning, I might do that. But, like, that's a legitimate long-term plan to change the world. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, it starts there. Right. Show up. Like, actually make yourself vulnerable and give your ear to somebody who's been suffering. Like, you'd be surprised. Like, you know, I think we said we didn't want to sit around and talk about it, but it's, this is what's going to push it forward. Our buddies, our people, our friends listening to this, hearing this, and hopefully, people take that same course of action.
And hopefully this is the collective view that, the church has,
I agree. What's
really crazy is I talked to my buddy, Jake, who basically was the last guest on the episode, and what was really kind of hard for the both of us was he went to school out in California, and he went to a Christian school out there. It was he went to a Christian college, Biola, and he got a great education. He's a pastor up in Portland, and he plants churches and everything. But what me and him both talked about after the podcast was what was shockingly different about California Christianity to Midwestern heartland Christianity almost. He had these things that are, these opinions that are literally biblical about this particular subject, and being met with opposition within the church community in a different part of our nation. And that's what, like, that for me was just like, wow, we really can't get on the same page here. It's not a matter of Jake having a brother who is black that they adopted from Ghana. It's they're saying, well, it's that California mindset. I mean, hey, he went to a Christian college. He's a pastor. You're a Christian. Why is there disconnect here? What are we like? I mean, if within the church we're all disagreeing and not actually having everything in common, like the first church did in the book of Acts, then, you know, we got to take a deeper look into this and got to be willing to, like, open our minds a little bit. And I don't know, like,
that's where you get into, like, at the formation of our country, the argument of the Federalist Papers versus
right.
the Constitution. It's like, do we have a 50-state government?
Right.
Or do we have individual states operating freely under one united banner? And so
right.
it's like, you start to really, as we communicate and as we move further forward in time, it's like you really start to see why that had a lot of merit, and why those guys who wrote that, you know, it is something that plays out. And it's like, you can even take it biblical, like you were saying, and it's like, Christians persecute Christians, whether they do it figuratively or physically. It's like, when we look back at the Bible, who betrayed Jesus? Judas, right?
Yeah.
Not Peter, right? Peter didn't deny him 3 times.
Yeah.
So it's like, we as Christians pick, like, oh, well, that sin was greater than that sin, so your sin's worse off. You're gonna be the bad guy. You're the Christian from California who doesn't believe what I believe. It's like, what?
Right.
It's like, what are we doing here? It's like, Judas, without Judas, the story of Jesus doesn't become complete. Mm-hmm. Jesus doesn't speak his last sentence on the cross. Like, does that make sense to you? Like, every Christian is going to play their pivotal part in this. Yeah. If we just start ripping each other apart, it's like, or as states we start ripping each other apart, it's like, what has this all been for? Mm-hmm. You know, why did I put on the uniform? Why did all the millions of people, we just had Memorial Day, that have died, why did they put on the uniform? Yeah. We have to really, like, introspectively ask ourselves, like, do we want to see our country continue, or do we want to see it fall apart, fall into civil war, go backwards in time? It's like, no. So it's like, you know, I feel your pain for that guy out in California. I really do, because I feel it happen a lot in the Christian community.
Well, what's hard for him is that he's coming back to his home here, like in Kentucky and Missouri and Tennessee, and he's being told he's wrong. Yeah. And I'm like, and it's not by other pastors. It's just by people that, you know, go to church.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that sermon again. You know, I won't go. Or,
right. Or they're like, hey, man, like, hey, you got to, hey, all lives matter. Yeah. Or something like that.
I'll put my kid in another youth group because I don't like the way you're doing things. You hear it in different forms all the time, and it's really sad.
And that's like where you're like, hey, you know, he got a degree in this.
Mm-hmm. But you also, it's like, you get to the root of it, and it's like, you trust your God, right?
Right.
Your God's my God.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about him, if you know he's a pastor and he's praying, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you going to do that the Holy Spirit can't do? Do you believe what you believe or no? That's where I get in it. And it's like, people be like, oh, you're a hippie. Or like, oh, you read too much Taoist books or read too much Buddhist. And it's like, no, I read those books so I can understand my religion in a greater plan, in a greater scheme. Yeah. It's like, Jesus quoted scripture to prove he knew. Right. Jesus understood everybody. Right. We were all made in God's image. So it's like, even the people who weren't believing, he had love for. And so it's like, if you're a Christian and you're going to look at another Christian and be like, nah, dude, your theology doesn't line up with mine, you're bad. It's like, no, dude.
That's ridiculous.
No.
Putting the tinfoil hat back on, it's an election year.
No.
Yes. Do you have any opinions about, I guess, I mean, this would be the year that everything kind of goes down. And it seems, so let me just, to lay out, like, I guess if you're in the audience and listening right now, not only has there been a worldwide pandemic that has crashed economies, put millions of people out of jobs, closed down thousands of businesses. On top of that, the social fabric of our country's changing. There's a borderline race war happening right now caused by whoever. And on top of that, we've got over 30 billion locusts traveling across Africa, eating crops by the millions.
Yeah.
And then later this year, the 17-year cicadas are going to finally awake from their deep sleep, and they will be counting in the trillions.
Yeah.
That's literally the number of cicadas that are going
it's
to appear in the United States this year. Global warming, whatever, whatever. Flooding in El Salvador.
I don't even
that's
feel
right.
like this is like a conspiracy at this point. Like, what do you
Sounds
mean?
like end times.
It's just like we're.
Well, what he's saying is, and I don't want to like hijack it, but what he's getting at, and I understand, is like you look at a year like 2009, and I mentioned to you guys briefly earlier, but 2009 you have H1N1. You're coming off the back of like one of the worst economic collapses in modern U.S. history. You have a newly elected black president, Barack Obama. You have, if you look back historically, all kinds of turmoil occur within that year. Advertising dollars don't compare the amount of coverage on that virus and on those mass shootings, school shootings, on those, killings of black people, whatever it is. If you dig into 2009, they weren't nearly as amplified and as replicated. And the conspiracy mind of what Drew's talking about is like, well, now it's 2020, and it is an election year, and it's Mr. Divisive himself, President Trump on one side, and Mr. Divisive 2.0, Joe Biden on the other. And so it's like,
so are we saying like those
conspiracy,
are like the only two candidates? Like,
well, in reality they are. I mean, Gary Johnson pulled out a hell of an election last time and got, 3% of the popular vote?
Yep.
So, I mean,
also keep in mind the 2016 election, 14,000 individuals above the age of 18 decided to write in the name Harambe for president.
the dead gorilla. So
14,000 citizens over the age of 18 throughout the United States all separately thought to themselves, I'm going to write in the name of a dead gorilla.
Dude,
Did you
I'm
do
not
that?
even 18.
No.
Oh, I thought you were like telling him.
I was going to circle back to a sick callback joke.
Yeah.
It was probably a private Facebook group, and that's how they organized.
Dude.
14,000 United States adults.
Yeah, 100%.
But see, but they wrote that in because they knew the only two real options they had was Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton.
The media has done, and that's where conspiracy comes in. The media has done a beautiful job of making you think you only have two choices.
That's what I'm saying.
So
Like, if you don't like neither of them, why don't you look at the other guy?
Okay. Anyone else want to head this one up?
It
doesn't.
Like, that doesn't make. I mean.
But that's the point.
Because
They
you also don't like him.
Let's say let's say
views
Joe Rogan threw his hat in for president. Joe Rogan has about like 8 million subscribers on YouTube, and let's say that all 8 million subscribers on YouTube were just loyal, and they all voted for him.
Yeah.
That is 2-3% of the United States population.
Yeah.
Would you vote for him?
Yes.
Yeah.
This guy would vote for Joe.
Would you?
Without a doubt.
Huh?
Without a doubt.
Oh, without
Yeah,
a doubt.
100%. Not a question.
I honestly thought the best way to win this election as an outsider would have been Tulsi Gabbard with Rogan or Andrew Yang as a running mate.
I've talked to pastors who said they would vote for Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's incredible.
But that's the thing. 8 million loyal followers, like subscribers, people who enjoy him and listen to him and probably for the most part believe what he says.
Yeah.
That's still 3% of the nation.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And, like, also something else is, like, I genuinely don't know, personally. Like, how do you, like, if you're of the age, anyone can run for president?
No, you have to be about the age of 35.
30.
Yeah.
And you have to be a United States citizen, like
Yeah.
born citizen.
So if you're
I
under,
believe you have to have been an elected official in some capacity. So
Probably
whether it's
so.
like governor, senator, House of Representatives, I believe.
Trump was a real estate mogul.
Oh yeah.
oh yeah, I was
Sure.
gonna say it
And
was
Reagan.
Trump.
Reagan was an
It
actor.
is 35.
It's
He used
30.
to be
So like,
resident in the United States for at least 14 years.
well, neither of you are 35 plus, but
What he's saying
I mean,
is,
like,
what the question
so-
is circling back to, though, about the conspiracy theory is that you would have a government or an organization of people so against Trump being reelected that they're, let's just visualize this for me and I can run you through it, but that they're willing to, one, push publicly to not worry about the coronavirus, because that way it would eventually hit and explode and everyone would freak out and then Trump has to make a decision. Boom, check in the box. We've got him looking like a fool. Then you start getting him like he does, just throwing off epic quote after epic quotes. You're able to just destroy him. Then you have, whether they were you or not, someone kill another guy, gets in the news, and then you know he's going to tweet something, and then you eat him alive. And you just continue to ruin him to a point where even, let's just say hypothetical, Joe Schmo in the Midwest is like, I just can't vote for Trump anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote Biden.
So,
But at the
so
same
think about it
time-
right now. So that this is Trump's resume as of right now.
yeah,
The United States economy has crashed, and it is worse than the 2008 housing market crashed that Bush was president during, right? You also have a worldwide pandemic where the media will tell you till they're blue in the face was all because of Trump and his lack of leadership in containing this deadly disease. 3, you have the social fabric of our nation completely in shambles, where basically the media and whatever misinformed individual on Facebook is projecting is that we are literally at each other's throats according to skin color or nationality.
Yeah.
That is Trump's resume right now.
yeah. Something that I'm also a little not confused, but wonder is like, I mean, do you think it's completely Trump's fault? Not completely, but like,
I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah.
I'm not.
That's a,
'Cause I almost feel like-
super loaded
Yeah.
thing to say, and what
sometimes I feel like you said, his role is to be the guy who just rides around, waves, and does that. Like, I feel like maybe most of the time,
Well,
the things that he says are not his own words. Like, I think people are telling him what to say. And
Doubt
what
it.
to,
If you want me to take that and answer it the best I can, like, yes, the answer to your question is like, he does, because the Democrats, if they get Biden in, that's all they want. They just want to have the Democratic president. Like, go smile and wave at people, Joe. Now we can run the show.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
No,
Like,
yeah, I understand.
Like, Joe Biden is a representative of, and then you have all these people behind him in line just chomping at the bit to get there. Because the Democrats hold the House. I mean, that could change in the election. But the Democrats hold the House. That's why they were able to push through all these impeachment things and control. Like, they have the majority. Like, they have key components to having a very strong government. The last component is that executive branch. And that's why they've also fought so intensely of the judicial branch of who Trump wants to appoint, because they want to get that next appointee in there. So they're not even worried about the presidency. That means nothing in politics. It doesn't. It's a left-right game. It's you guys win, we win, you guys win, we guys. Why do you think Trump had Hillary at his dinner right after saying all those things in the last election? It's like, I'm not, just believe whatever you want about politics, but it's like at the end of the day, it's a 3-branch government, and the Democratic Party has 2 of those basically under control, and in order to get that third one, they need that president to appoint that.
and that's why I
judicial
don't see why people get so mad at Trump.
yeah.
There's a
Again,
lot of things, but-
it's like I can't even.
I mean,
because to
and
be
I-
honest, I can't excuse some of the things he does either.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
And
I just
he
can't.
said
There's
he
nothing.
said some things where it's just like
Me, and I just want everybody to know who is listening. I
Yeah.
don't know enough to be saying.
You're not even 18, so you can't even vote.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just
But
like
you
wondering.
are old enough to be literally prosecuted by the media, just like that one kid out in
Yeah.
Covington. He's literally that kid's age.
Yeah, I know, and that's why.
And if he accidentally put on a MAGA hat and he just was in the wrong place at the wrong time, his life would be over.
And that's what I saw, like, a kid go into a protest wearing a Trump shirt, and I don't know if he did it intentionally to get people angry or he was just, I mean, most likely, but I think he was also probably just seeing how people would react to him wearing that shirt or something. But like, I don't know how to put it. Like, I don't know. It's just confusing to me when I see people just like chuck stuff at people and like, do you hate blacks? Like I heard it in the video when like he was wearing that and they were like, do you hate blacks? And I feel like wearing that shirt or wearing something of that is like not screaming, I don't support you, I don't like you. Like I don't agree with people who say, you don't like me because, and they're basing that off of what he's wearing.
Well, they're saying the reason they say that from their perspective is because he's supporting a president that in their minds is blatant racist and
and that's what I'm asking. Like, how was like I don't know enough at all.
Yeah.
Like, how was he racist?
So you have an entire media conglomerate that is putting together all of these different pieces of statements, videos, or speeches that he's made that is basically reinforcing the narrative of saying that he is a racist president. And so look, if I, like, this is just like a thing. If I literally just kind of walked around and said, Alex is a pedophile. If I said that enough times around enough people, it doesn't matter if it's true or not, people are still going to watch you around their kids. Eventually.
That's fair.
Like, eventually. So, not, like, he has said things where it's like, I clearly don't agree with that. And I think that's just, like, why would you say that? Why would you tweet that? That's a dumb thing. But if you also have a big enough platform of people who are all collectively in agreement that we don't like this guy, and we're going to basically point out the things that we think are wrong with him, and we're going to say it enough times, whoever is basically within earshot of the platform of that media conglomerate is going to eventually believe that that person is what they say that they are. Just like if I, like, whoever I'm in earshot of says Alex is a pedophile, people are going to...
It's twice now.
Yeah, I was going to say, we might need to chill out with that phrase.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's literally how dangerous it is.
Yeah.
I've said it twice now, and it means nothing. There's no merit to it. It's not true whatsoever. You can't prove it.
Yeah.
But the fact that I've said it twice now, people get
No, I know.
tired.
To add substance to what, because it's so true. But the liberal left media hijacked politics in roughly the 80s. You can look at Malcolm X as a precursor to it. You can look at JFK as a precursor to it. But they alluded to the fact that identity politics was going to be the downfall of this country. And so, like, the furthest parts of the left party, the most wealthy, the most powerful, have made it a goal to get you to think about politics in one way. And that is, this is how I identify and I see the world. Does that make sense? And so, like, that feeling that you're having, no, you shouldn't have that. And that's why Trump won the last election, is because there are enough people that know, put me in a room one-on-one in black and white, we're going to get along, we're going to love each other, we're going to want the best for each other.
Yeah.
Enough people like that got into voting booths, they wouldn't tell their wife that they voted for Donald Trump, they wouldn't tell their best friends that they voted for Donald Trump, but they did.
Yeah.
Because they will not be controlled. I know handfuls of Democrats registered who vote in primaries, who stand in that booth and vote Republican. Because, like, at the end of the day, the Republican Party, whether you like them or not, the GOP, they don't get down with identity politics. They want you to think freely for yourself and cast your vote, whether you like or you don't like. The Democrats, that's not what they want. They want you to vote, you're black, so you vote for black people.
Okay.
That's why you know.
Or you vote Democrat.
Yes, because we have your back, even though statistically and historically we never have. So it's like,
And but like, I'm confused. Like, why are they scared to vote for like what they feel is right?
no, they're controlled by the masses. Mob mentality. Go to imright.com, get your facts. Like,
I mean, Jack, imagine growing up in a very broken, disenfranchised community where, along with that, if you don't think a certain way that literally the world tells you that you ought to think because you're representing your people, and then you don't, not only does the broken, disenfranchised community that you've grown up in completely cast you out, but then the rest of the world doesn't accept you. And that, like, literally, you've got, I mean, you have so this is where, if you have black skin and you want to vote conservative, you're put between a rock and a hard place. Because you've been told.
I don't know what conservative is. Like,
voting Republican.
Right-leaning Republican, GOP. Like,
okay.
So here's the rock and the hard place. You've got the entire black community where the media says is Democrat because the Democrats have their back, which statistically speaking is not true. Then you've got the other half, or you've got the other side of the political spectrum, which is full of Caucasian Americans who the media also says hates you because of your skin. So you are now going to vote for a party that the media and so many people on platforms tells you actually hates your guts because of the color of your skin. On the other side of that, your own community rejects you because they think that you are a self-hating individual who also is turning their back on that community. So now you have just fallen into the most hated, smallest demographic of all time.
Yeah, and that's something that I guess I might not ever understand.
We won't. We absolutely won't.
Because I don't think, I mean,
the only thing
if
we
there's
would ever have
it's
to
like
prove,
it's almost like it could be almost as small, but not really. Like if you were a Cavs fan and I was a Warriors fan, I'm not gonna hate your guts. I'm just gonna be like,
yeah.
But like, I mean, I know it's a lot bigger than that, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, I could never like.
But that's exactly what they want to do, though. If that makes sense.
They
Like
wanna
that's
make it a
the
big
point they're getting it, where they want everyone to feel. It's our job, especially as Christians, I feel like, to push really hard against that.
Yeah.
Because like, if Jesus taught us one thing, it's like your identity doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of us was created in God's image. We are all God. So it's like to think anything except that, it's like that's why identity politics is so far from religion. It's so far from a lot of actually progressive things.
yeah,
And that's why you have liberals dropping out like flies, like a Dave Rubin, like a Jordan Peterson, and being accepted by the right conservative side of things because they're like, look, we might not agree with everything you say, but we know that they've pushed you away. Those black guys who've been disenfranchised and be called Uncle Toms. That's been a weaponized term from Democrats for years.
Yeah. Imagine
being a smart Candace Owens, a smart, successful individual who's worked her tail off to become not just popular and famous, but smart, educated. Now, does that mean she's ever not going to be wrong? No. But Candace Owens goes out into the public limelight as a previous left-leaning liberal who used to be in the media pushing all those ideas.
Right.
She switches teams. She is lambasted now in communities. People, black people, Mexican, white, they call her the worst kind of things. Like all the things they're saying racists are saying to them, she is actually being threatened with on a daily, weekly basis at colleges and universities. And those kids who are doing it are being supported by teachers. It's like you start to really get into the meat and potatoes of like, this isn't going to be, like I said, a short-term fix.
Right.
This is like, you need to be raising your family. Like I'm called, like that is what Christianity is all about. Like from the inside out, father and mother, kids, like this isn't like, I pray to God that next week we get legislation passed. I pray that we do, and I will always push that direction, but it's like reality sets in and it's like, this is going to be a long-term solution. This is going to be if we're going to shift this country's guts from the inside out, it's like that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, but here's the thing about that too, though, is that that particular issue in itself is obviously something that we need to address. But what is amazing is that I am fully anticipating another cataclysmic event to happen that could be related to that or not related to it at all.
I mean,
considering what's going on this year.
Yesterday was the halfway mark of 2020.
Right. We still have a whole other half of this year to go, but it is an election year, and that is where the tinfoil hat comes on, because I'm like, how many things have happened this year that have been from so many different angles that honestly just make me think like what is going on? This is one of those things where like you see animals like start running like through the woods, or like a dog like going under the porch or something because they have that sixth sense that inclement weather is incoming. That's what it feels like right now. Like all of like the real particular like moral argument stuff aside, like just looking at like the state of the world right now, that is what's like really troubling for me is that I'm fully anticipating something at like either this continues for weeks to come, or there's going to be another thing that happens that basically sparks a big catalyst event. And then that also makes me ask the question, why? Because 3 innocent black people killed in a row over the last 2 weeks. Like, I know that people are saying racism isn't getting worse, it's getting recorded. And I believe that. I certainly believe that. But what have we been talking about for the first half of this year? Or for the last 2 to 3 months? It's been about a pandemic. It's been about going inside, staying indoors, doing the right thing. All of a sudden now, it went from a disease was all you ever heard about, all you ever talked about, to now we are talking about police brutality. We've completely forgotten about this pandemic that is killing however many thousands of people that have spread all over the nation. Who cares about that? Protest in the street, collect by the thousands. That's all out the window this time. Why did that happen? Why now?
And what's coming next, like you said.
Right.
Like, you know, conspiracy starts to be like, you know, we got 5 months until the election's even cast. So.
And but that's the thing is like that's how can I express my opinion in an intellectual way without getting completely written off by like saying, hey, this whole thing is just my red flags are flying up all over the place, that this isn't just a bunch of things that happened.
I hate to say it in the words of like P. Diddy, but vote or die. Like
Right,
we talked about this
right.
right before we started. Like people never even knew who their mayors were, who their governors were, who their state senators and representatives were.
Right.
And it's like, if anything that's backfired through this conspiracy, it's like people now know. People are now aware. Oh, crap! My city votes historically Democrat. Look at all these horrible things we've done the last 30 years.
Right.
I'm going to vote in November. I'm going to pay attention to who I'm electing.
Mm-hmm.
That is like short term. You want to have, you're not 18, but if you guys want to have, use your platform on Instagram to spread the word.
Yeah.
Use your Facebook to spread the word. Hey, I'm not telling you my opinions, but these are the facts about this candidate that lives around us that's running.
Yeah.
Maybe they are superior to the ideas of the guy who's been the incumbent for 30 years.
Right.
You know, maybe the Kennedys, you know, the lifelong people that are in these political positions, it's like, maybe it's time for them to be replaced.
Right.
If things haven't changed since the 60s till now, in a real sense for African Americans, then that is the way we affect it.
Right.
You know, or like that is voter, like that's what I would take it down to. Like if you want to have a short-term effect this year, survive the storm, survive whatever's coming.
Yeah.
Stay smart, stay humble, pray, but like, dude, vote in November and spread the word before you cast that vote. But I think that's the way you got to do it. You got to know who you're voting for.
Yeah.
Another question, like another thing that I've thought about is like, what do you? I'm not like completely. I obviously I know their goal is to completely get rid of racism, which is obviously I completely agree with that goal. But like, what I want to know is like, how are they like want a new law put in place or something? What law would we like? I'm trying to think like what law would we put in?
Well, to make it simple enough, we've got to sharpen up basically law enforcement officers. We've got to sharpen up that you know, hiring system, the training system. To break it down a little bit easier, let's take the George Floyd situation. You've done combatives, I do jiu-jitsu. We know how to put somebody in a position of control and to keep them there without compromising their life.
Yeah.
And what that was with that officer in George Floyd was a horrifically heinous way, but not even it wasn't even a way to do it. It's murder. What he did was murder. And if he tries to make the case that he was trying to control this man, we both know that is an insane lie. Mm-hmm. Because the way that he either genuinely believes that or he's a liar. So he's either an idiot or he is a liar, because you don't do that. And if he is an idiot, then it's because of the system that trained him.
No, yeah.
Right?
But like, what if he just like? Do you think the police academy or something does teach them to do that?
No.
So like, how do you fix it?
No.
So what
That's
he
what
did
I'm
was
asking.
Longer training, more psychology evaluations, more deeper background checks. I think I've heard about this reference, but just taking the academy and stretching it to a year long, so you really get to see somebody at their character and truly evaluating them.
Yeah.
And also, this man had over 18
And that I think
filed on
is
this
ridiculous.
And I hate to keep referencing things we talked about before, but like right before this, I said to you guys, and I believe this, but like, I love police, and like, I served in the military, so like, don't let this come off the wrong way. But if I and any of the listeners sit back and think about all the people we've known in our lives, let's just be honest about the fact that not always the very best of us become police officers.
Yeah.
I'm willing to admit that, because if I can go off of the people that I've known and even some of the officers I've run into in my life, like, there needs to be a higher requirement. Increase the pay so that somebody who wants to be viable in the economy can also be a cop.
Yeah.
Increase what they do for your families. Maybe they include like the military BAH to help pay for your rent and food each month. Like, maybe we reallocate some of our resources to make that an attractive occupation versus like, let's just be honest, it's a $35,000 a year crap paying, very dangerous job.
Yeah.
It's like, who's going to be willing to take that?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's the rowdy boys, and we all know exactly who I'm talking about when I say that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why you end up with bad cops.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just that is me being at the table.
Call of Duty in real life.
That's me being at the table, being as honest as I can.
Right.
And so now it's the job of the other side of the table to come and be as honest as they can.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what's going to happen here is like, we're going to have to concede things and be honest about it, about what's going on.
No,
I think another way to help it, big time, long term, again, solutions to this is like, it's not always going to just be about the police force too. It's like Kevin Harp just had a beautiful podcast with Rogan where he talked about his initiative with JP Morgan Chase is he's going out in the communities teaching young men how to open a bank account. Mm-hmm. Your mom taught you how to do that, right? I'm just saying, there's a lot of, or your mom did it for you, but she'll eventually one day teach you.
Yeah.
There are gentlemen in the black community that reach their 30s before they open their first bank account. They go to check cashing stations. They don't know how to get a loan. I was 23 when I required this loan for the business. I had people in my life willing to teach me and guide me and show me. You have an entire community, and not an entire community, but you have an entire community purposely being deceived to the point of like, don't worry about that stuff.
Right.
The Democrats being like, just show up and get your welfare.
Right.
Just show up. We got you. We pushed the laws. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. It's keeping them crippled. If you make a generation, what was this country built on? Entrepreneurs.
Right.
Period, point blank and simple. People who are willing to go out, sacrifice, make a business, make a brand. You know, the Rockefellers of our world, the Carnegies of our world. But they were entrepreneurs. Plain and simple, that's why America's the greatest country in the world.
Right.
So it's like, you need to empower black entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. You need to cap the cops, pull them back a little bit, and put some laws in that are financially, but also you got to look at the other side of things. You need to go into these communities and you need to truly be teaching and helping out. Not just saying or not just acquiring programs or dollars, but empowering. Like, the most empowering thing that ever happened to me was I got that loan. Mm-hmm. And then it put me, I had skin in the game. I had risk. I had collateral.
Yeah.
You bought this equipment and you've now, stepped out and doing Triune. It's like you've put your neck on the line.
Right.
You're willing to work harder.
Yeah.
You're willing to go further.
Yeah.
Allow those same opportunities to those young men. And it's like, I believe in humanity.
Yeah.
I believe those young men will grow up to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They won't fear cops. They will lead with respect. They will lead with love. Like, the Holy Spirit that we believe in will take over and transform. Right. But it's like, we can't just keep ignoring the problem.
Yeah.
We can't just keep waiting for the next media cycle.
Yeah. And then also, you can tell me your opinion on this too, but as far as legislation goes, I'm going to need a real convincing argument of why we need to keep citizens' arrests a thing.
Yeah.
Nobody's making a citizen's arrest on me. I will laugh in your face, and then I will do what I have to not be arrested by you, because I don't believe you. like if you don't have a uniform on, and then if you pull a gun on me, well, I mean, I'm not going to do things that you want to do. That's it. I'm thinking about myself and my life, and I'm getting home. So if you really think that like exercising this law of citizen's arrest is really going to be the difference maker, we got to revisit that whole thing, because that to me is like, you're not doing that to me.
And a lot of the people that are willing to make those citizens arrests are people who are unfit to even be accepted by police academies.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
Yeah, no
a
doubt.
lot of times, and that's like if you look into the facts of those types of findings, it's like it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
The amount of people that think they're going to have this vigilante effect in the world, when in reality they cause pain, death, and destruction. Like, you know, it's like they're doing exactly the opposite of what they want to be doing.
Yeah.
Here's the mugshot of the 4 cops that murdered George Floyd.
Wow.
So what are they? Here's what's
I think
interesting.
second-degree murder, and the other, or what, first.
Aiding and abetting.
Here's what's interesting. The guy in the bottom right corner. What is he?
Looks like he's not of white descent. Is what I would say.
He looks black. The guy in the top right corner looks Asian.
Guy in the top left corner looks creepy.
And this is why you have to circle back. This is why you have
it's terrifying.
you have such. If you look from 2007 when Obama was being portrayed as the change, and he got that huge, overwhelming popular vote, the highest voter turnout in African American history. Mm-hmm. You had all these records being broken, and then he failed. You had a lot, and I'm just saying that objectively.
Right.
I voted for Obama. Boom, surprise. But I did the second time.
I wasn't old enough.
Yeah, but here's what I'm saying. When he failed, objectively, you had a lot of people within those communities that we're referencing make the decision, I'm going to start really digging into this. And then they ended up conservatives. Mm-hmm. And then, they're like we talked about and brought up, it's like, that is, they're seeing through that, what
Right.
we're just looking at.
Right.
They're looking at the identity politics and being like, no, this, yes, it's sad, a black man died,
Right.
you know, but they're able to look at the equation and sit at the table and have a conversation. It's like,
Right.
you have to have more of that. Like, you can't exclude the fact that there was an Asian police officer, that there was another officer involved, like, and just be like, this is white cops killing. Because
Right.
that's not what it is.
Right.
Well, it was the white cop that has neon.
Yes, yeah.
But it's like it's just like what you said earlier too. You've got a shooting or something in a neighborhood. If you're in the car with that shooter, well, you're going down too.
Yeah.
You're an accomplice. And so it's just like what those guys. That's how they ended up in the situation, because they didn't have their knee on his neck, but they were holding him down.
And this conspiracy theorists had whatever we're talking about, but I had heard, and I don't know if this is true, and I'll look further into it, but I think it begs the question. I had heard that the officer who physically put his knee to the neck of George Floyd had known George, and they were working part-time as bouncers in the officer's off time and in George's off time.
I heard
at
that
a
too.
bar for 17 years. So
I heard
you
that.
and I have a 17-year-long relationship, and I'm not willing to hear you out.
All of a sudden, I'm in
It
handcuffs.
even
You've got
starts
your
to
knee on
look
my
like
neck.
when you watch that video, like he is doing something he doesn't want to be doing. Like you said, to go back to the training question, that he is doing something that goes against his training.
Right.
You see the face of a man defeated. You see the face of a man who, he's not
Right.
enjoying what he's doing. He's not raising his voice.
Yeah.
He's simply kneeling. And so it's like, that's where I get scared on the inside. It's like, how deep does this go?
Right.
Was this one man acting independently, individually?
Right.
Or was this
Yeah. No,
this
seriously.
orchestrated? Was this a man who worked with a man for 17 years? Could you imagine being George in that scenario? Maybe they wanted his windpipe pushed on so that he couldn't speak, because he
Right.
was going to say, hey,
Yeah.
I've known you 17 years, bro. What are
Right.
you doing to me?
Right.
He was going to ruin the whole... So, that's where it gets, to me, almost to the point where that's why I said, I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation.
And that's also what's difficult too, is because it's almost too blatant to be true. Like you watch the video, and for 8 minutes and 23 seconds, you're in pure disbelief that that's happening, because you have the one guy standing up in front, keeping everyone at bay, and everybody is saying, "Can you do look?" everybody's okay. Just check on him.
Yeah.
He's like he's not doing anything. Just check on him.
Yeah.
Touch his neck, check his pulse, and they're just like, just stay back, just ignoring everything. You're in disbelief the entire time. You're like, I can't actually believe what I just saw.
Okay, and I'll reference this. I was in the United States military, ready, trained on CLS, combative life-saving, basically is what it is. And
right.
So like, you're trained to be a combat lifesaver. All cops go through that same thing too. So they're not like certified EMTs, but they know how to, like you're saying, check a pulse.
Right.
Your job is to protect and serve, so your job is to keep people alive.
Right.
And it's like, it's the same thing as the rules of engagement in the first place that get brought up all the time.
Right.
In order for us to pull a trigger overseas, 5, 6, 7 rules and laws have to be broken before we can even engage. If we see a vehicle coming at us with weapons pointed, we can't fire until the first shot's fired.
You can't fire till you hear a whiz.
So they can physically drive as close as they can to you, blow up a VIED, a vehicle-borne IED, as the first vehicle, and then you're gonna just now be engaging. And so you're telling me that that's where you lose me.
Yeah.
Like that is where you lose me. I can't even look at that guy and be like I said, like believe that's an individual making an independent choice.
Right.
My conspiracy goes to that's an individual being forced into making that decision.
Right.
That is an individual who's maybe his family's been taken, maybe money, maybe he's been however they do it, and by they I don't know, but it's just like when you hear about a guy knowing a guy 17 years, or you see the videos of these guys being provocateurs, it's like you can't help it.
Yeah.
Like as you get older, you get a little more jaded, and it's like I know what goes into that training. There's no way that he would have ever made that choice.
I mean,
unless
all
he's
you
a blatant
can do
racist
is
who wants to kill somebody.
Right.
But to me,
has no regard.
Occam's razor, it's like what's the simpler of these two solutions?
Yeah.
I don't run into racism like that as often. I definitely run into power.
And what's crazy
I
is
run into power daily.
that cop doesn't look like a moron either. He knows he's being recorded.
Yeah. And they know they've got a compromised officer. Oh, you've been an idiot in the past.
Yeah.
You've got 18 filed complaints. It's like we've got you. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like it gets to this hairy, weird place where it's like now I see where some of these communities are coming from in a more robust way, because they're like, look, we were there doing the right thing, saying please, like officer.
Yeah.
We're good. We're not going to but please just check on him.
Yeah.
Trust me when I tell you, if I was in that crowd I
would have drop kicked that cop.
I would have drop kicked or pulled my 1911 out and put it to the head of that police officer. I would have been willing to face the charges to save that guy's life.
I would have used my white privilege to risk it all. You know
exactly.
what I mean?
But they're not even willing to go there because they know as soon as they turn and open their hands up, it's going to be blah 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 blah. No questions asked.
Well, you saw him take a step forward, and the guy immediately reached for his holster.
That's where to me it's like we have to step back in this conversation and be like, look, I can't even imagine. Because if we four were standing around right now and a Sanibel police officer had his knee to my neck, and the three of you asked police to step in, he doesn't look good.
It's ride or die.
Dude, they would have put me in an ambulance, rushed me over, done everything to save my life. Not because they know me in the community, but just because that's what they do.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
But
like,
I also talk to
I
also talk to the cops that I do jiu-jitsu with, and they're baffled.
Yeah.
Like they're like, this is what he did was so purely against his training and code of ethics and just simply what his job is, that it's evil.
Yeah.
Like what he did was evil, but then you need to know why. And it's is he just that racist enough to where he's like, okay, I am going to kill this man that I've known for 17 years on camera in front of a bunch of people next to 4 other cops who are all in compliance with what I'm doing. What? How many cops has to be there for one cop to say, take your knee off his neck?
Yeah.
It's 5-on-1. We've got him.
It's been 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
I don't know why I was thinking about this, but I guess do you think his court case would be televised?
No, he's already been convicted.
Yeah, it's going to be close.
Yeah, he's
really?
going to jail.
Yeah, case.
Oh wait, yeah.
His wife publicly divorced him and everything and all this, and you're
That's what I mean. You got we as people need to dig into the why of
Right.
life,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I feel
Why
like for a
did that
long
guy do
time
that?
we weren't able to
Yeah.
ask the question why. We were surviving World War One, we're surviving World War 2
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam. It's like we've had a lot go on. It's like our parents have given us this life. Our generation is a lot more introspective.
Right.
We're healing traumas, generational wounds, you
Yeah.
know, whatever you want to call it. It's like now is the time. Like the bell has been rung. Are you going to answer? Like, are you?
Yeah. And
That's-
truly, I feel personally like I guess we can just label it the enemy right now. I feel like the enemy is showing its teeth more and more, and it can't help it because there are a lot of things that are being proactive in the direction of standing up for your faith and trying to do the right thing and pushing towards a better life and a better education for people all over. We're reaching further and further corners. We have the technology to do it. We're able to do that. So now the enemy is like, we've got to show our teeth a little bit here. We've got to make things move a little bit more in the daylight than we want to. And that's the hard part as somebody who is the leader of a group of people, as like a government official or a pastor of a congregation. You would just lose all credibility at this point right now. Like, you will look like a fool if you say, hey, look, I really think that a lot of these things are happening that are completely separate areas are still not a coincidence. They're happening at a string of this time.
One of the best podcasts I listened to recently was Mike Tyson and Francis Ngannou, and surprisingly enough, it was one of the most like philosophical, deep, like better listens. So I recommend
I'm gonna have to give
all
that a
you guys
listen
get in
for
there.
sure.
But Mike Tyson talks about this so poetically because of the life he's lived. But like the closer, so like with all that we've talked about and how far we've gone and all this stuff, it's like life is also better than it's ever been. And like objectively is what I'm saying when I say
Right.
that. Like even for black people in America, like even for, you know, Asians, you know, who might originate from China, like living in the United States right now, like with all, like, but we have phones, we have food, like energy is in great supply. Like, yes, the economy's down, but like you can go get a job. Like the world objectively right now, this is the best time.
Yeah.
There are less slaves than ever before. There's less homicides, murders than ever before. It's like all these objective statistical things that make it that way. So it's like the better that God's doing in the race, closer behind Satan is. Like, and I believe that with my whole heart. And what Mike Tyson said is like, the man that gets closer to God gets closer to Satan at the same time. So like the deeper you are into your faith, and this happens to me a lot. Like as these blessings and convictions happen to me, I also can sometimes look in the mirror and catch myself and be like, damn, I'm looking at some. Do you get what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
yeah.
I will question myself and be like, is this Satan guiding me to make this decision, or is this God guiding me? Because we talked about this in the car the other day. Everything to me is spiritual warfare.
Right.
Everything in
Yeah.
all scenarios.
Yeah.
So that might be taking it to the nth degree. But yeah, I do believe there's more room for these types of conversations where it's like an enemy.
It's like
the
the better of a warrior you become for God, the more the enemy pays attention to you.
Yes.
I mean, it would make sense for the devil to target the stronger Christians, the one who are trying to spread the word, like to tempt them more. Which
And not
makes
even
sense.
step outside of Christianity. The devil doesn't care. The devil doesn't want anyone to worship any god for any
Right.
reason. The devil wants death, destruction.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So like, even if you're a Muslim doing outstanding things in your community and building it from the inside out, or a Hindu, it's like the devil is attacking right now
Yeah.
Yeah.
in every form and fashion. I love that visual of like he's showing his teeth right now. It's like, because like you said, and I believe this, it will get worse before it gets better. Now I don't mean that in the race terms or in the disease terms, but I just mean the world itself.
Yeah.
Revelations tells us that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like this might not be Revelations that we're living out right now.
Right.
It could progressively get worse until then, but it's also going to get better because God is still alive.
Yeah.
He's still fighting. He's still going to win. And so it's like,
Yeah.
that's the weird juxtaposition you find yourself in as the Christian. It's like, well, I know how the story ends, but I don't know how we get there.
And you don't even know if you're going to be alive to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In whatever form or fashion that comes.
And then
Which I don't know why. I don't know. It shouldn't scare me, but like at the same time, like it would almost suck if he. No, never mind. I mean, I don't know. I have thought so much about like my future life, like what I want to do, and it wouldn't suck if he came right now because obviously I'd be going to a way better place. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, you probably you want to get married, have a family.
Yeah, like I want to experience all that.
Yeah.
But at the same
but
time,
also it's heaven.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Be like you literally like everything. You know.
Yeah, it'd be like,
You don't have to play this hard game
you know
anymore.
what?
You know.
It's all right. Yeah.
It's disturbing the way that my instincts tell me that like we are looking at more than just a series of events happening.
Mm-hmm. How do you think they felt when the flood happened?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how do you think Moses then felt being persecuted? Like, their life sucked.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. It was awful.
You know, and that's what we're going through. It's like it's hard for us to have the hindsight because we're in it right now. But it's like, dude, this has been going on for thousands of years. Just trust God. Like,
Right.
weather the storm. Like,
Yeah.
He wins.
Yeah.
I told you know what I mean? And it's like, it's just how do I play my part in that? You know, how do I? Because even like you said, you become a pastor. It's like you still get questioned. It's
Yeah.
like, so what is Jack gonna do? Like as he gets older, like to make this problem better? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And something that like, and I know it's back to where we started, but not really. Do you like? Is it a thing for cops that they have to have a certain amount of, not arrests, but like something like?
Oh, you have a quota. Yeah.
No, it's been disproven. It's not. A lot of the funding.
Ticket quota though.
I mean, it can be depending on the county and precinct, but
Oh, okay.
Not arrest.
yeah, not arrests.
Well,
Ticket quota, yeah, but even that bends with different
Right.
economies.
Okay, yeah,
different
because I was
markets.
gonna say if that was a real thing, I think that's so stupid. But
So like I know for instance like we bring in enough like toll and parking revenue out here on Sanibel that like our police officers aren't made to hold a quota. So
Okay.
if you get in like small town USA Midwest and they don't have a big draw, a big attraction, like yeah, you can find precincts where cops are told like, hey, we got to hit 10 tickets each this month because that's how we're making our money.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
but
like
I
in
still feel
larger
like-
economies and larger cities, like no. Trust me, they're not sitting officers down and being like, hey, you guys got a ticket or arrest some people today.
yeah,
Now you can really get into some hairy conversations when you talk about privatized prisons
Right.
and why people are
what
arrested
is
on
privatized
like
prisons?
prisons in the United States are privately owned. It's one of the three actually best
There's
ways.
privately owned prisons.
Exclusively almost. What do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of the three most profitable things in the United States. The first being the military, the second being pharmaceuticals, and the third being privatized prisons.
But what do you like? How are they?
I'm so glad you brought that up after
Yeah.
you talk about this.
Yeah.
I have one thing to ask you.
So you
But
have.
what do you mean, like I could go to prison? Or,
Yes. So like you.
But how do I get to be like you're coming to my prison?
Well, you would work stuff out with states and like
Huh.
counties, and in that way, are you going to be a federal prison, you're going to be a county jail, or whatever? But you would basically buy the land, put the money up,
I see.
build the building. But then for each inmate you have, each life or each whatever, they are invoice, so to speak, that you get to write to the government. And so you get to say, this guy cost me $33,000 to keep alive. I got to have this much medication and insurance on him. I got to provide this much cold air. I got to provide this much water. Here's my bill, and you send it to the United States government. United States government writes you a check.
So, but
And
they're
so-
not making any money. They're just.
But they both are. And so you get, what happens here is you get
do they
you
get
get-
paid a little extra above?
people
Wow.
getting arrested, keeping quotas high, and then you get those privatized prisons getting money, and then they're taking that money and putting it into a political party or putting it into, and so
That's
you have
crazy
this,
to me. I don't think that's. I don't think
Oh,
that's
trust
a
me,
good idea.
you can get into hours and hours and
Yeah,
hours of
'cause, like,
documentaries and films that.
They're
Yeah.
happy when more people.
Why do you think marijuana is still illegal in the United States?
Illegal?
Yeah, on a federal
Probably for
level.
that reason.
Yeah, no, it is. 60% of people who sit in prison right now are there for minor possession
Yeah.
charges.
Yeah. So to kind of like segue a little bit from privatized prisons to what you just said, the most profitable thing is military. The military industrial complex, which is just a giant rabbit hole all on its own. This stood out to me today, and I just wanted to know if you had any personal opinions. Former Secretary of Defense James Mattis denounces President Trump,
Mad
describes him as a threat to the Constitution.
dog.
Do you I mean, as a former Army person, you know.
I mean, he's known as the Mad Dog. He's a Marine. He's as bad as they come.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an absolute warrior. This is where, again, you get into those conversations where it's like, I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
Do I think there are powers at play that really don't like Trump because he's a wild card? Yes.
Yeah.
Do I think the institutions in the country like predictability? Yes. Do I think economies like predictability? Yes. It's like you get into a really weird gray matter where 3 years ago, when Trump served his political purposes, Mattis was his biggest fan, wanted him to get elected, supported him publicly. Now that maybe he sees an end to Trump's tunnel, is he opening up other doors? Is he looking out for his own, job in the future? Like, you really start to look into. You gotta ask those types of questions. I don't think it's anything new to know Trump's a threat to the Constitution, but I don't know if that's always in a negative light. I think Trump's a threat to the Constitution positively, because I think some people have taken that Constitution and manipulated it into disgusting, incestual, terrible ways. AKA the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. The ungodly amount of money they get paid for the amount of work that they do, and how many vacations get paid for, private, so you get into a weird area of like, I've never really taken much Mattis has said with much validity. I never have. Do I respect what he's done? Your guys' grandfather's a general, and we're sitting at this table because of how much respect I have for generals. I think that if he deserved respect, he'd have it from me, but I just don't think he does. I think he's done enough things in his career to make you question why he does what he does. I think he's a career military politician. That's would be my best answer.
Just that one video where I saw where somebody was interviewing him, and he's like, is there anything that keeps you awake at night? And he's like, nothing keeps me awake at night. I keep other people awake at night. And he said that so quickly.
And it's the truth. I mean, he is an absolute terror. When you're in another part of the world and you hear that he's coming, or in the past was coming to be the commander of that area, he's known for and done some things in his career that, like I said, like it calls into question, does he deserve my respect? I didn't always respect everyone just because they wore a uniform. I respect people on an individual level. So it's like, I think it's convenient timing. I think a lot of people are going to take shots at Trump right now. I think it's the popular thing to do. I think if you put me in a 6-month tunnel and ask me who's the president as of December this year, I say Trump, though. I think, ironically enough, like I talked about with people going into the booth and voting off of their own truth, not the rest of the world, I think he wins in the largest popular vote win of all time.
Wow.
I really believe that. I think he gets over 61%.
Also, we can't forget, too, that just the other option is someone who is deteriorating by the second.
Is that really the record? Over 61%?
Yeah, I think the highest popular vote was collected was 59 or 60%.
Oh, wow. I think it'd be more for some reason.
I mean, we could dig and find it, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
No,
And so it's like, I've had conversations with people who are, this is like, to circle back to the 100 people in a room, I got 10. It's like the 10 who are really controlling the narrative on a media scale. I think we know which way they vote. So it's like, it's going to feel, just like Hillary, it's going to feel like, man, she's going to win in a landslide. But then when Trump won, everyone was kind of looking around at each other like, so you
how did that happen?
Like,
so even like the
you have Hillary stickers in your yard, but did you vote for Trump? And those conversations were happening, and I think even more so, it amplified this time around. The way I think it's going to feel going into it like, man, he's going to lose. He's going to look like a fool. It's not my hope. I mean, honestly, like, if I don't even know who I'm going to vote for. I go off of how I feel one day at a time. You guys know how I am. But it's like, that's just what I see happening. I really genuinely, I think this dude is an absolute warrior.
I've said, for the most part, just to explain it, I'm like, would I rather get stabbed with a screwdriver or smacked with a hammer? Like, that's what it feels like right now, But it is just like what is difficult is that I don't know what to say to people, and we won't have to dive into this like super deep, but I don't know what to say to people when they can genuinely look me in the eye and say somebody with the health conditions that Joe Biden has makes more sense.
Well, and just the fact you push for all these progressive issues.
Right.
And we love stats in this country.
Yeah.
We love saying LeBron's not better than Jordan. Why? Because of his track record, right?
Right,
6-0 versus 3-6.
Right.
It's like you take that same theory and apply it to President Joe Biden, President wannabe Joe Biden. It's like, how does his track record add up?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, he voted no for this. Oh, wait, he voted for this bill that put more blacks into jail.
Right.
He was in Hillary's camp. Like, yes. Like, there are so many things where you can look backwards, but no, we'll ignore all that because he's going to be our candidate.
And then not to mention even the most previous thing where he said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black, basically.
And to be honest, all the kudos in the world to Charlemagne. Seriously. Because if I was him on that interview, what?
Yeah.
What did you just say? I would have gone off the cuff. But he handled himself. I know what he said off camera. We all know Charlemagne.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's like, that is exactly the crux of the problem. It's like the Democrats are telling you, here's the problem, but we're just going to throw the same white stick figure out there. We tried with the lady last time, didn't work. We'll try with the guy this time. That's what I mean about when I said divisive and divisive 2.0. It's like the Democrats just looked at the Republicans and were like, oh, so that's how you went? We'll just let Biden be crazy and off the cuff and say things. Hey, Joe, go say crazy stuff out there.
But he is actually saying.
No, I know. Monkey see, monkey do. It's like the Democrats don't realize they're always a step behind.
Right.
Who pushed for the abolition of slavery? The
Right.
Republican Party.
Right.
Like, who pushed for women's rights? The Republican Party.
Yeah.
It's like when you really look at the history of it all, it's like that is why you get Candace Owens. That is why you get people of those communities willing to step out and be like, hey guys, just look at the facts.
Yeah.
Like, just simply look at history and get a little bit of an understanding and free yourself from the oppression of vote by your identity.
Yeah.
Like, if you really want to free yourself as an individual, you have to know your history.
Yeah.
Like,
And that's why I get confused sometimes, because I feel like sometimes our top 2 candidates could be some of the 10 out of the 100. You know what I mean?
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think
And that's why I don't
understand.
understand. Like, I feel like, is there just not many people running? Like,
Again, circle back to like the cop issue, but it's
Yeah.
like, Alex, you just graduated college. It's like, if someone was like, do you want to go be president and get treated like Trump and do all the, like, no.
yeah, that is
Yeah.
fair.
No, at this point, you have to
That's
have
fair.
a real complex about yourself to say, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You almost have to be like an egomaniac, megalomaniac, like borderline, maybe even schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Like, you have, like, think about the fact, like you referred it to fatherhood, and that was beautiful, but it's like, imagine wanting to be the father to 350 million people.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta have a complex to be
Yeah.
like that. Like, love Trump for being able to handle it, I guess.
It has to be attractive
But-
to you that you will be the most hated person on the planet.
Like, you know what I mean?
That-
I mean, it is hard. I mean, it's got to be one of the hardest jobs in the world, because you have to try your hardest to satisfy everyone, which is
Not even
nearly impossible.
Not even that. The people that you work with are trying to make you fail.
Yeah.
That's another thing. You have to do the right thing, and everyone's going to keep you from trying to do
Yeah.
I
it.
think
Which is
objectively
crazy.
speaking, like, all of us could sit in a room with a Barack Obama and get along with him. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, regardless of politics. But just looking at a guy like that who goes from, like, youthful and exuberant to just being completely worn out 8 years later.
To
I
look
mean,
like
just,
lose it, like
Yeah.
just hair turning gray and everything.
and to go from the fervor that he had and what he wanted, and he's still going to do amazing things, but I mean, you just see the candle kind of burn out. And that's why I think,
the
ironically,
amount of supplements that I'd have to be on to do that job.
and that's why, like, yeah, you look at these guys doing it at the end of their careers, I think it's because it's like a ride off into the sunset scenario kind of thing. It's like,
And I don't know if that even needs to be a thing.
oh,
70s,
yeah,
I think you're out of touch.
yeah,
In all honesty,
that's how we change it with the
Popal was a general for the last 2 years of his career. He was still he still had to retire at a certain point. And it was like, not because of anything major, it was like, hey, it's time.
Yeah.
You served your country really well. You served your country 35 years. You became a brigadier general.
Our government says as a whole, when you turn 65,
Yeah.
stop working.
Right. Right.
But then our president's going to be 73 years old.
Right.
Our government is literally going to tell you, go on Medicaid.
Or
stop working.
Or potential president will be 78 years old.
What are you collecting on Social Security at 78? 100% of your benefits?
Yeah.
You shouldn't even be working. No, I agree. And we listen to a guy who loves to say that it's a popularity contest.
And if you're still that much of a psychopath to be working that hard at that age, do it in the private sector.
Yeah.
In all honesty, if you're like, I think I could do some good, do it in the private sector because you'll have a better job doing it there.
Yeah.
But hold on, just a second. Let me check this real quick.
Yeah, this is going long.
Joey, we've been talking for 2 hours straight.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
This has been just a heck of a ride, and I love talking about this. I want you guys to have a chance. Do we have any closing remarks before we hop on here?
Only one, and I really hope I just did not notice this now. This is completely off topic.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean it's on mute, does it?
No, it's on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Thanks for being here, Jack.
I just now realized that, and I was like, holy cow, we've been on mute this whole time.
I would throw up.
Yeah. I'd
I
be like,
would
well,
absolutely
that sucks, but...
They're
I
like,
saw
well,
the
we
red
just
light
started
on
recording it.
below mute, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We didn't, but
No, that's fun.
that's all.
You got any closing remarks?
I don't. No, that's good.
Cool. Joey, you have any closing remarks? Anything you want the audience to know about what's going on in your life, or what do you want them to know about this patch of paradise down here?
No, I mean, yes, but no. It's like I'm grateful for, one, the relationships we developed, two, grateful, God brought you guys into my life, your grandfather and all that stuff, but it's like, I would personally challenge every person who's listened to this, if you've made it this far, but just do your best to reevaluate, to reflect, regardless of if you're a believer or non-believer, if you have faith or you don't, like, objectively look at yourself in the mirror in the beginning of the day and realize that the only problems you're going to have that day are because of you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't get over that fact, then try it again tomorrow. Like, just objectively make yourself a better person one day at a time. Like, that's not just my belief. Like, I think it should be everybody's belief. Like Rogan says all the time, like, you are writing your own story. Like, go and do more of that.
Yeah.
Stop commenting about what Drew's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Stop worrying about what Jack's doing. It's like, none of that brings out anything good.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, like, just...
We need to, as a Christian community, adopt more of a servant-heartedness for the world around us right now.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, it's like, I'm going to keep digging into that. I mean, from when we had our last podcast till now, it's like, I believe I've grown and matured as a person. I hope to continue to do the same thing between the... You get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's it. Like, just keep every day, like, digging, figuring, make yourself better. It's like, if you hear this and listen to this and you know of things that we can be doing, like, we pose the question, it's like, reach out to Drew, reach out to me, reach out to Alex, Jack, like, tell us, share with us that information, don't hold it, and let's make the world a better place because we're choosing to do it, not because it's just going to happen. Because God's got that plan written. Let's be proactive about it.
Bro, this was fun. I'm going to have you on again in September. You know what I mean? And we'll make it happen. But people, if y'all have made it this far, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Bye.